Now, just to round out the last sections of our infographic, we're going to demonstrate how to use the Smart Narrative Visual. And before I start demonstrating this, two things to know about the Smart Narrative Visual. First of all, it is oftentimes a pain in the butt to get what you want out of the Smart Narrative Visual. So I'm going to kind of show you how to at least have the least painful experience with it that's humanly possible. And also, just some good news is that my understanding is that with Microsoft Fabric and some of the other new rollouts to Power BI, is that the Smart Narrative Visual is going to be overhauled and sort of lean a little bit more heavily on some of the Microsoft Copilot features that really enable much more robust sort of smart text. Now, right now it's a little bit murky to me what that really means for how you will demonstrate features like the Smart Narrative Visual in your Power BI tool, but hopefully, in the not too distant future, this visual won't be quite as I say, janky or difficult to use as the current Smart Narrative Visual. And I mean, granted, if you already have experience with the Smart Narrative Visual, maybe you think, Sean, it's really not all that hard to use the Smart Narrative Visual. To each their own. I find it kind of a pain in the butt to use. Sometimes I'm trying to get the Smart Narrative Visual to return things that I consider to be super, easy. And I seem to have all kinds of problems with it. So anyway, let's go ahead and put our first Smart Narrative Visual onto the page. And you can either use the narrative visual over here, or you can just insert a text box. If you click on Smart Narrative, what's going to happen is that Power BI is just going to generate its own Smart Narrative Visual based on what you have on the page. So what I'm going to do is, just to give myself a little bit more freedom in what gets visualized, I'm going to create my own Smart Narrative Visual by just dropping a plain old text box onto the page. And within a text box, you can actually just customize your own Smart Narrative text by using this value feature down here. And when you click on value, you basically have the option to, ask a question about your data and insert a dynamic result that will change based on, your users interacting with your report and sort of filtering it and stuff. So let's go ahead and enter some text into this box, and then we'll go through and we'll reformat it here a little bit later. I'm going to try using, 20 looks too big. Let's try using 18 and see how this looks. So for my Smart Narrative text, I'm just going to try to summarize this first section here, where I'm asking which Kraken Coffee products are driving revenue for the first part of 2023. So I'm just going to enter some text here. So far in 2023, we have observed total sales of, and let's go ahead and insert our first measure in this text. And so in case you missed what I did here, I just clicked on this plus value. And it's saying, ask a question about your data. I'm just going to enter total sales. And I'm going to wait, and hopefully in a second this thing will wake up and actually start returning stuff from my data. There we go. So now it's grabbing my total sales. You can see it's pulling up $698,812, which matches my number up here. And, basically what I'm doing is when I enter total sales, this thing is looking for a match over here in my data. And it's also including my measures. So you can see that this is already formatted as a currency. It's referencing my total sales measure over here, which is basically what I want it to do. So we're just going to go ahead and save that value. There it is. And you can see it's not formatted correctly, but that's fine. We'll just copy and paste some text over here. And I'm going to say that we have observed total sales of $698,812 across, let's go ahead and enter another value. And for this one, we're going to do total transactions. There's my 149,116. Let's go ahead and save that. And I'm just going to enter transactions. And of course, this yields an average order size of, let's enter another dynamic measure value. And of course, we're going to use our average order size measure which Power BI recognizes. There's my $4.69. And let's go ahead and see if we can also split this out by some different values here. Let's see. Average order size across our 3 new Florida stores ranges from, let's go ahead and see, average order size where store location equals Orlando. There it says 481. We'll go ahead and test all of this here in just a second to make sure it's accurate. Average order size where store location equals Tampa. And last but not least, we'll do average order size where store location equals Miami. And if we recall, when we were building our summary visuals over here, we did put together some visuals here. So we can confirm $4.66 in Tampa, $4.59 in Miami, $4.81 in Orlando. That does match up with the numbers that I'm getting over here. So even though we created a visual over here that we're not necessarily using in the final version of our infographic, which is totally normal, at least we can go ahead and confirm all of the values that we're seeing in this text. The next thing that I'm going to do is let's go ahead and find our top product detail by sales. And so I'm just going to go ahead and enter a new value here, top product detail by total sales. There's our Davy Jones's sustainably grown organic hot chocolate, large. And let's go ahead and describe what's happening here and say this is our strongest seller in terms of revenue, but this does vary by location. For example, and let's go ahead here and we're going to isolate our top product detail by total sales where store location is Orlando. And you can see that here Jolly Roasters Dark Chocolate Large is our top seller. Is our top earning product in Orlando. And let's see if there's any difference for our top product detail by total sales where store location is Tampa. And this civet cat, whatever that is, maybe a type of tea, is our top earning product in our new Tampa location. So we've got quite a bit of space down here. I just kind of gave up on formatting everything as I go. For now, let's go ahead and just highlight everything. Let's make it DIN font. Let's go ahead and increase it to 18. Looks like I've still got plenty of room here. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag. Let's see. First, I've got so much room, in fact, that let's see if I can get away with making this 20. You can see that I've got some weird spacing here. There's not really anything that I can do about some of that, like this LG is on another line. We can try kind of expanding our text box here. Yep, and that took care of it. But when using the Smart Narrative Visual, you're going to end up with some sort of weird spacing at times. It's kind of unavoidable. But like I said, maybe the future versions of the Smart Narrative tool will have sort of better customization here. Now that I am done with my Smart Narrative text, let's go ahead and turn off our background here. And what I want to do is I want to pick a color for my font here that is, going to kind of, I'm going to pick something that's kind of a dark green that sort of blends in with this aesthetic here. But what I also want to do is I want to go through some of my measures that I'm quoting, and I'm going to bold them and make them white for no other reason that, like, I want these numbers to be, to kind of jump off of the page since this is an infographic. I really want these numbers to stand out. I don't want to overdo it, but for some of these that are summary measures, and I'm trying to help the user sort of connect the dots between these measures up here and the measures that are being referenced down here in the smart narrative text, I'm just going through and, adding some highlights against this sort of teal background that's going to help these numbers and these figures really leap off of the page. So let's go ahead and I'm even going to highlight these other products as well. Just adding this contrast just sort of helps these numbers, sort of come forward. I'm even going to add a little bit more spacing there. So that hopefully they will be a little bit more memorable and sort of entice people to read. Because if there's one thing that people don't like doing, even people that read a bunch of Power BI reports and conduct a lot of analysis, a lot of people are not, celebrated readers. You have to give them a reason when there's a lot of text for them to read. I mean, like, be honest. How excited are you to read this, these 4 paragraphs explaining what's happening in the infographic? If you're not excited about it and you're building the thing, how can you expect someone who's looking at your infographic for the first time who doesn't know that much about the data, how excited do you expect them to be to read this text? So we're just trying to give them, something to pull them in, something to hook them. For our next smart narrative, we're going to insert a text box over here that's going to sort of capture what's happening over here on the right with these visuals that explain at what time of day do our Florida locations see the most revenue. So we're looking for visuals we're looking for a smart narrative that's going to explain that by and large, most of our sales dollars come in at around 10 a.m. and we don't really see a whole lot of money coming in before 7 a.m. or after 1900 hours or 7 p.m. If we want, we might also call attention to, which of these days during the week we typically see the most business. So let's go ahead and insert a new text box up here that we're going to sort of turn into a smart narrative by inserting our own dynamic measure values. It is surprisingly difficult just to drag a text box because you have to really grab the very outsides of it. And so we're going to go ahead and start with, the most popular time of day for our customers to spend money at our Florida locations is around, and let's go ahead and insert a new value here. And we're going to ask the question, which hour has the most total sales? And hopefully this will say 10, which does match or align with our visual over here that shows this orange spike at around 10 a.m. And we're just going to go ahead and manually write 10 a.m. there. And if you want, you can even put a note, if you suspect that something you're including in a smart narrative is probably going to be pretty obvious or not surprising at all to someone who's reading this, you can even leave a note like, no surprise, we're a coffee company after all. And next, we're going to try to, pull something a little bit more interesting out of this. So actually, real quickly, let's go ahead, and I forgot to answer the other question about our most popular weekday for sales. So what is our top day of week for total sales? Let's try which weekday name has the most total sales. Sometimes you have to really kind of play with your phrasing of, what you're asking in order for Power BI to recognize it. You'll notice that right now it's throwing an error on weekday name. It's not recognizing it, so I'm going to have to go up here and remind myself what I called it. Weekday name is not the name of a field in my data, so hopefully this will work. Which day name has the most total sales? And it's saying Monday, which we should be able to confirm pretty easily. Let's go ahead and add a quick table up here for day name. Let's go ahead and drop total sales in here. And you can see Monday is at the very top here, not by much, just by a couple $100. Not a whole lot of variation between any given day of the week. But I will probably surface in my smart narrative that Saturday tends to be our lowest day for sales. Monday is our best selling, or you can say our highest revenue generating day of the week, while let's see which day name has lowest total sales. There's Saturday, which of course we just noticed a second ago. Well, Saturday is our lowest revenue generating day. Next, we're going to see if we can surface something interesting here. And again, one thing that I noticed from this visual that I thought might be relevant to someone who's trying to make a big operational decision off of this infographic. One thing that we might want to surface is, what we are noticing, however, is that our sales don't really take off until 7 a.m. and have all but ended by 8 p.m. Combined sales before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. amount to only, and let's go ahead and create a value for that. What we're looking here for here are total sales where hour is less than 7 and greater than 19. It says 24,836. We should be able to confirm that number just by going over here and hovering. 21,900 and 2,936. That appears to be correct. However, we're probably going to run into a really challenging formula here in just a moment. If we want to say what percentage of total sales this is. A mere, and I'm just going to leave this blank here, of our total sales at this point in the year. And what I'm hoping to insert here is basically the percentage that $24,836 makes up of our $698,812 in total sales. I mean, like, we can manually do this math. 24,836, 6 divided by 698,812 equals, so we're looking for about 3.5%. Something tells me that it's going to be pretty difficult for Power BI to generate this value, because what we did originally was something like total sales where hour is less than 7 and greater than 19. But now we're trying to express this as divided by total sales. And all I'm getting is 24,836. There might be a different way of phrasing this, but you'll see that right now I'm not getting any result. Power BI is recognizing several values in here, but it's very confused by the language that I'm using, and it's not returning anything no matter how hard I try here. So one thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go over here and we're going to create a new measure. And I'm just going to manually create percent of sales. And we'll call this before 7 and after 19. And for this, we're just going to divide. We're going to calculate our total sales. I'm going to add a filter statement here for our fact table where hour is less than 7 and hour is greater than 19, and we're going to divide that number by total sales. Just to pause very quickly, you'll see in the filter statement that I used this weird double ampersand up here. That's just shorthand for and. I'm giving Power BI two criteria at once here. I'm saying filter the coffee fact table for all values where hour is less than 7 and greater than 19. And then I'm saying, of course, I'm closing out that part of the formula, and then I'm dividing it by total sales. Let's go ahead and check that this is working correctly. I'm going to go ahead and add a new card up here at the top. Currently it says blank. Let's go ahead and see what's happening here, where hour is less than 7 and hour is greater than 19. Oops, I made an amateur mistake here. There are no instances where the hour is both less than 7 and greater than 19. My apologies, folks. This needs to be this sort of a double bar here. It needs to be or, folks. And now we have our 3.55%. So again, sorry about that, but that was the mistake. But hey, at least now we know that our formula is working correctly. We're just going to go down here where we had sort of a placeholder space for our new measure. I'm going to go ahead and just look up that percent of sales before 7 and after 19. Now that I'm referencing that measure, there's my 3.55%. I can even go down here and specify that I want to show only a single decimal place. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in. And now I'm going to go ahead and round out this smart narrative by saying that based on the fact that sales before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. amount to only $25,000 or 3.6% of our total sales, our management team is considering reevaluating our opening and closing times for all. Let's go ahead and fix my typo for all 3 of our new locations to reflect the slower wind up of sales and the steep drop off in the evening. I know it's a lot of text, but for this second section, we don't just want to be purely descriptive. We don't just want to, tell people, the same types of things that we told them above. We really want to give them sort of a recommendation or something to walk away with. At the end of the day, it's an infographic. We don't just want to provide them with information, though. We want to give them something that they can take away, some sort of call to action. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and use the same sort of dark text. You can see that, of course, as my text is getting darker down here, some of this text is going to become even more difficult to read. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything. Let's make this text just a little bit darker even. And I'm going to say that the most popular time of day is important to highlight. What these highlighting features do is it also just makes it so much easier and faster for someone who's looking at this to scan through this text really, really quickly. So let's go ahead and highlight this string here. And explain why we're highlighting it. And let's go ahead and highlight this. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and create a smart narrative text string for the last section down here that talks about our full year projection. For our last smart narrative section, we're going to write a little bit more DAX, and we're going to sort of combine some other elements here. I noticed that my matrix is bleeding just a little bit onto my line there, so I'm just going to nudge that up. So what we want to do here is, we've taken the time to sort of forecast out how much sales we think are going to hit all three of our new locations by the end of the year. And again, this is by no means a scientific forecast. All we're doing is a simple run rate of average daily sales for the first half of the year. And we're just multiplying that basically by the number of days that are remaining in the year. It's about as simple and unsophisticated as forecasts get. But hey, this is the first year that these stores have been open. This was always just going to be a best guess. But let's go ahead and try to rally someone who's looking at this infographic towards an annual sales target. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is let's go ahead and add a new card. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of drag this into place next to our seahorses here. And let's go ahead and drop our forecast measure in there. And I'm going to go ahead and update my background. Want something pretty dark. Let's go ahead and update our border to be the same color. I'm going to use 10 pixels to get a nice sort of rounded corner border here. And this number is important, so I want it to be pretty big. I don't know if I need it to be quite this huge. I definitely need to give it a better title than just forecast. So let's call this full year sales goal. And let's go up here, and I want to display the entire value, and you can see it gets cut off a little bit. So let's try making this just 40 size. 0 decimal places, that's looking pretty good. I want this color to be nice and loud, so let's go for orange. Now I want my label to be a little bit bigger. Let's go with DIN for our font. Let's increase that to 15 or even 16. And let's see what this looks like. Maybe white. I'm actually thinking I might even want to flip these around. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how that looks. I just want, this number to be nice and bold down here. And since I'm using white to call out all of my other important values up here in the other visuals, I'll just use white to call out my full year sales goal. Now, let's go ahead and insert yet another text box that we're going to use as a smart narrative here. Just going to drag this all the way down. And I'm just going to drag this over, and I'm waiting. You'll notice that as I drag this red kind of line appears to the left. That's how I know that my smart visual is perfectly aligned to the other smart narrative text boxes above it. And I'm just going to leave that right there. And now I want to give some kind of description as to why I have this information here. So I'm going to, we want this last section to be a real call to action for anybody at this Kraken Coffee company that's looking at this infographic. And we want to tell them why we bothered projecting all of, this additional sales for each location over here. So let's say, based on average daily sales so far in 2023, we believe, and we can go ahead and grab our forecast value. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't want any decimal places here, but I do want it formatted as currency. We believe that this, $1.4 million number is a reasonable target for our first year of sales across our 3 Florida locations. However, this does not fully account for the great momentum that we have seen in May and June of this year. What I'm doing here is I'm going to create a section that's going to sort of pull even more attention to the fact that we see a lot more orange and kind of hot zones over here in May and June than we do in some of the colder months, which are kind of these darker blue areas. So we're going to say, notice on the right that average daily sales for January through March were only, and then we're going to insert a new value here. And for this, I'm going to say that I want average daily sales, which remember is already a measure that we've calculated over here. average daily sales where month is 1 or 2 or 3. That covers our Q1 sales. There's $2,852, which I've already built this thing once, so I know that that's correct. And I'm drawing contrast to the fact while average daily sales for April to June spiked to, and now I want average daily sales where month is 4 or 5 or 6. And if you're wondering where the 4 or 5 or 6 are coming from, those are just the numbers that are assigned to those months, right? April's the 4th month, May's the 5th month. I'm sure I don't need to explain that to you. You're sharp. But let's go ahead and save this. And now we're really drawing attention to the fact that, man, daily sales increased almost by $2,000 in Q2 versus Q1. And if we can sustain that exceptional growth, we feel confident that our new offices can help us blow the above sales target out of the water, which, yes, that's a nautical pun. And now, if we really wanted to get fancy here, we could even build a second forecast based on the increased average daily sales number. Because you'll remember that average daily sales is the most important input to our forecast in the first place. So let's go ahead and create a new measure here. And we're just going to call this average daily sales Q2 only. And we're going to build a measure that uses our average daily sales logic, but applies it just to our date table where our month equals 4 or month equals 5 or month equals 6. And I'm just going to go ahead and click somewhere else. Let's go ahead and insert that number as a card and make sure that the value looks correct. 4.86 thousand, I believe that's correct. I'm going to go ahead and pull it down here. Let's go ahead and show all values. That looks correct to me, 4,859. So we're all good there. If you're interested in a more efficient way of writing this DAX, instead of using the OR and having to do month equals 4, month equals 5, month equals 6, we could also just cut that by doing month in, which for any of you that know SQL pretty well or have had exposure to SQL, you'll know all about in probably. And we're just going to basically say that filter date so that month includes 4, 5, 6. You'll notice I get exactly the same value down here. It doesn't make any difference. I'm going to go ahead and convert this to currency. And now I'm going to need to take the next step of our formula here. There we go, Q2 only. Let's go ahead and copy our average daily sales switch formula here. Well, first I need to actually copy this average daily sales to here. So let's go ahead and do average daily sales Q2 all selected. This is going to be calculate average daily sales Q2 only for all selected values in our forecast table. Want to make sure real quickly that I did that correctly. Yep, looks good to me. Okay, now we're going to head back over here to our average daily sales switch, and we're going to just create a copy of this. You can call it 2 or Q2 to sort of keep with the theme here. Let's go ahead and do our Q2 all selected formula. We're setting this forecast up exactly the same way. We're just using a different input for our forecast. Instead of using average daily sales for the entire year, we're just using Q2. We'll go ahead and save that. Whoops, need to call this forecast 2 or something like that. This number is going to be quite a bit higher. There we go. Almost $1.6 million using our higher average daily sales to project the rest of the year. So now that we have our second forecast, let's go ahead and add a little bit more narrative here. If we can sustain that exceptional growth, we feel confident that our new offices can help us blow the above sales target out of the water. Even though the above number is our goal, we would be thrilled to see our 3 new Florida offices hit our stretch goal of, and we're going to use our other forecast here, forecast 2. We're going to convert that into currency, use 0 decimal places, and we're going to go ahead and save that there. And now that we're done with that, let's go ahead and turn off our background. Let's go ahead and first I need to remind myself what size font I used, 18. Let's go ahead and highlight everything, switch this bad boy to DIN. Now, notice, of course, that I've got a very, very dark background here now. And I've also got a whole lot of text here. So let's go ahead and reconsider our font size selection. I think I'm going to need to drop this down to 16. There we go. And you can even cheat a little bit by expanding the text. Boom. I like it. Okay, now notice that we've got a really dark background and really dark text. It's probably going to be almost impossible for us to create some dark text that reads well against this dark background. I can go about as dark as I want to go. And notice it's still really difficult to read this. So that's fine. I mean, we're in the final section here. Almost all of this information is important at this point. So we're just going to use white text here. This entire section is intended to be red. I'm going to go ahead and instead use orange down here for my accent colors. And let's go ahead and call out some other things. Notice on the right that average daily sales for January through March were only 2,852, while average daily sales for April to June spiked to 4,859. And down here, I'm just going to highlight our stretch goal. And because this other number is important and I don't want it to get completely lost down here at the very, very bottom, let me go ahead and highlight that and try to make it a little bit larger. Whoop, that's way too large. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of nudge this over so that it's roughly centered. And last but not least, since we're kind of wrapping up our infographic here, let's go ahead and zoom out so that we can more or less look at this entire thing as one big, cool infographic. I'm going to go up here to View. Just going to say Fit to Page. That way I know that I'll be able to fit the whole thing on here. And there we go. Overall, I think it's a pretty kick-ass looking infographic. We've got our smart narrative visuals. We've got an infographic that really does a good job of sort of incorporating our teal and orange color scheme. All of our data visuals have nothing behind them. They're all super crisp and easy to read. Our text maybe gets a little bit busy, but hey, we had some fun with it. We've got, some seahorses and some fish sort of floating in the background. And down here, our text really pops, sort of pulling people's attention to this section that sort of outlines what our various sales goals might be based on the 2023 halftime review. So I hope you enjoyed that infographic. I'm pretty excited by it. This is going to be a real challenge, and chances are your infographic is going to look subtly different from mine. And I want to remind you that that is absolutely the point. If there are hundreds of different versions of this infographic floating out there, it doesn't really do anybody any good unless you've made it your own. So don't just try, maybe the first time, try to copy, more or less what I'm doing. And then do another run through of this infographic where you make some different design and aesthetic choices and try to make this thing your own.